This episode is sponsored by the Spring Forward Writers Retreat. If you're a Gen X woman or a millennial woman even, and you have a book idea in you, or you have several book ideas in you, and you're struggling to narrow that down, or maybe the process of publishing is a bit too cumbersome and complicated to you, join me for the Spring Forward Writers Retreat coming up Thursday, March 13th to Sunday, March 16th, 2025 in sunny Orlando, Florida. We're going to guide you through the process of writing your book, and by the end of the weekend, have you walking away with a completed one. So you go from aspiring author to actual official author. We fully demystify the process for you. We take away the confusion. We take away any tech challenges because we're walking you by the hand to get these things done and sharing with you the tools that we published authors have used to get it done and get on bookshelves. And we also teach you how to get on the bestsellers list as well. So we're not just having you walk away with a draft and you're like, okay, now what? You're going to walk away with the draft and the next steps you need to market your book effectively and become a best-selling author. So don't wait. This is coming up very soon. So sign up today. Go to springforwardretreat.com. And for the month of February, you can use the promo code BHM to get 20% off your ticket. So spots are limited. Get your spot now. Go to springforwardretreat.com to get your spot. No matter who you are, no matter where you are in life, no matter what you're working on, no matter what your luxury item is, you don't have space for anyone in your life that does not respect your boundaries. Period. That includes family. Good evening. Happy Wednesday, my winners and goal-getters. Welcome back to the Getting the Win show. I am your host, Melissa T, the procrastination bully. Today, we are getting into the toughest topic in the world for people-oriented people. People pleasing. Okay? We about to hit this on the head and help you get out of it if this is your struggle. All right? I'll be full transparency. This is one of mine. So I'll share with you the statistics that I've learned, and I'll share with you the lessons that I've learned to be able to come up out of that, to grow out of that. It's a process. Full transparency. It's a process. Like I haven't fully beat it, but I'm past the worst. By the grace and glory of God, I am past the worst. But let's talk about it. So I'm going to lead off with a quote that Jay Shetty shared, which I thought was very interesting, a little bit mind-bending. So I'll break it down for you once I share it. But here's the quote: "I'm not who I think I am. I'm not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am." Let me say it again for the people in the back. I am not who I think I am. I am not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. Sounds trippy, right? But that quote summarizes people pleasing. It captures it to the core, right? People pleasing is all about the way we behave based on other people's opinions of us. Now, I'll be honest with you, like I have struggled with this for many, many years in my life. And this does tie to procrastination, and I'll make the connection here shortly. So stay with me. But this is something that I very, very closely struggled with because when I'm concerned with how someone else perceives me, I change my behavior or I change my patterns. And because I'm prioritizing their thoughts or their opinions, I'm not paying attention to my priorities over here. I'm paying attention to what I think they would want me to pay attention to, right? We do that all the time, don't we? Like those of us who are people pleasers, like, or recovering people pleasers, right? We have that tendency to put others' priorities ahead of our own, and then our priorities don't get met. This is a form of procrastination. We're delaying what's important to us, the commitments we made to ourselves, by paying closer attention to what others want us to do or what we think others would want us to do. And that latter example is even worse because there are times when we're doing things we think other people will appreciate, whether to surprise them or in the vein of going above and beyond. And sometimes they may not necessarily need what you're trying to do. Meanwhile, your thing over here suffers. Your luxury item over here suffers. Okay. So believe it or not, this is a form of procrastination. So I wanted to tackle this today just in case people pleasing is something you struggle with and maybe you never noticed the connection between people pleasing and procrastination. And let me go back very briefly to that quote because I did promise you I was going to break it down. I am not who I think I am. I'm not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. Here's the issue with people pleasing. In that quote, you hear what I call a double false. Let me break down what a double false is. The first false is who I think you think I am. So that's the other person's perception of you. That's one false. The other false is like, since you're paying attention to what their conclusion might be of you, you're also not being true to yourself. So there's that falsehood. I'm not being fully authentic. That's one falsehood. Based on what I think you might be thinking about me. That's the second falsehood. Okay? And the reason this first falsehood is a problem is that since we're not being fully authentic, we actually impact other people's impression of us. We impact their conclusion, their opinion of who we are, because they don't fully understand who we are. They haven't seen the full thing. Raise your hand or put "that's me" in the chat if you've ever come forward with a representative and not yourself. Okay? I'll be honest with you, I have done that in the past. There were certain things I would put away for the sake of not coming across to insert adjective here. In my case, I'm a whole nerd, y'all. Like, these days I'm unapologetic about it and can safely say it. But there was a time when I undervalued it and saw it as a minus. So I would put that away and would only come across as purely professional, especially since I'm a nerd with military history. One thing they teach you in the military is professionalism. Like, military bearing is a whole thing. It's not just about the uniform and making sure your uniform is crisp. There's a certain way you carry yourself, a certain posture, a certain look, a certain way that you speak, a certain cadence. There's certain words that you use, prefixes and suffixes. It's a very specific kind of language that is very clean, very polished, very professional, and intentionally impersonal. So when you're coming across with parts of you that are subtracted and people are seeing that representative of you with certain pieces missing, they're not getting the full truth of who you are. So that's the double false. You're not being fully authentic. And because you're not being fully authentic, the other falsehood is their perspective, their opinion, their conclusion of you is also warped. It's also incorrect. So as a people pleaser, if you're moving and behaving based on what you think they think you are, then it's all bad. Shout out to my folks from the D. It's all bad, right? So if people pleasing is your struggle, let's dig into this and dig into how to fix it. Let me share with you a couple of stats that like blew my mind. Okay. Number one, a 2022 study from YouGov revealed that 49% of Americans identify as people pleasers. First of all, hold up. Remember, the US population is well over 300 million people. That's nearly half of us identifying as people pleasers. That's kind of alarming. Okay, but that's stat number one. Stat number two, I got this from a psychology website that recent studies were showing that 75% of people over 55 that identified as people pleasers found themselves dealing with many medical issues connected to their people pleasing. Okay, now, here's why the second stat hits home. because you might zone it out because you're like, oh, well, they're over 55. That might not apply to me. Let me give you an example closer to your age bracket. I just turned 42 yesterday, nowhere near 55 yet. Okay. And I can tell you well before my 40s that because of my people pleasing, that actually led to the health challenge that I came on here and testified about last year. There is a level of chronic stress, not just stress, but chronic stress as it relates to the people pleasing. And that chronic stress impacts your body and has a ripple effect on your health. Because I was so concerned with what other people thought of me, and particularly what the person I worked with every day thought of me, I ended up suffering severely. Like, and all of it was internal. So it's not like I was in pain every single day. But the way that the chronic stress manifested could have turned out pretty badly outside of the grace of God and a massive dietary change. If you've been rocking with me, you heard my journey about becoming whole food plant-based vegan and how that 3.5 month runway helped me get through a very major and rather complicated surgery that I had. But yeah, the folks that are over 55 that encounter this same kind of stress and the health issues that come from that, they find themselves hospitalized, even if they're high achievers. There are some who deal with chronic stress and they might not produce as much, but these are also high achievers, people who have the chronic stress and they produce phenomenal work. And if you're watching this, you're likely somebody who produces phenomenal work because you're big into personal development and self-improvement. Here's the thing I need you to remember though. If you're a recovering people pleaser and this episode applies to you and you're someone that's into personal development, let me lovingly remind you, as a procrastination bully, self-care is a part of personal improvement. Self-care is a part of self-improvement. And self-care is one of the solutions to overcoming people pleasing. The first step in overcoming people pleasing is learning to draw boundaries. Easier said than done, I know. Trust me, I get it. Me even saying that to you was probably nerve-wracking. Your heart probably started racing. I know the feeling. It's still an adjustment for me to learn to say no. But very recently, earlier in February, I had to have one of the hardest conversations I've ever had to have. But I drew a boundary, and it was necessary for me to do so. Closed mouths don't get fed. People won't know how to behave around you unless you tell them. You set the expectations. And then for those who don't respect boundaries, because unfortunately, there are people in the world like that. That's when you draw the hard line and cut them. Because if we're talking personal improvement and self-improvement and self-care, no matter who you are, no matter where you are in life, no matter what you're working on, no matter what your luxury item is, you don't have space for anyone in your life that does not respect your boundaries. Period. That includes family. Let me say that again. You do not have space for anyone in your life who does not respect your boundaries, including family. Last year, I had Jas Abraham on here, the boundaries coach. I promise you she'll co-sign on what I'm talking about. Additionally, you guys, if you've been rocking with me, you heard my interview with Jessica Holly, the author of Everybody Can Go. And it's a similar concept. It's all about boundaries. And that's the first thing. You have to remind yourself that you are enough. You have to remind yourself that you are indeed a luxury item. Remember, Jesus made the ultimate investment in you. He literally went all in on you. Literally. gave his entire life, emptied his body of blood so that you can have life and have it more abundantly. You are a luxury item. You are enough. And his brilliance is in you already. We're all made in his likeness and image. His brilliance is already in you. You reflect his brilliance. Anybody in your life that does not respect that does not have the right to be in your life. Straight up. And I understand context is key. So sometimes that will require what I called previously clarifying conversations. Maybe you approach the conversation asking some questions, sharing what is important to you, sharing what you value most to that person who doesn't respect their boundaries, and asking them what they value and what their expectations have been, and explaining those sticking points where you can't meet them. If they have no respect for why you can't meet them, that's when you can draw the line. Because by that point, both sides got full context to each other. You've heard their expectations and what they want from you. You've expressed what your values are and why there are certain expectations of theirs that you haven't been able to meet, or why you will not meet them because of your values. If there's still a clash, or if they still don't respect your boundaries, cut. Okay? Cut them. Because as I mentioned before, with people pleasing, this directly feeds into procrastination, because you're focusing on what you think other people would want you to do or what other people expect you to do, and then delay on your luxury item that is still over there. When your luxury item was given to you and entrusted to you by God to complete. Your luxury item is why you're literally alive. Yes, we were created to serve and love others. But when Jesus consolidated all 10 of the commandments, when he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as you love yourself, that second one, he said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. The as in that sentence implies that the latter part has to happen first. You have to love yourself first before you can appropriately love your neighbor. So you have to ensure that you remind yourself that you matter, you are enough, and you are just as valuable as the person whose priorities you're trying to serve. Both of you are equals in that respect. You're equals. Both of y'all bleed. Both of y'all get tired. Both of y'all still have to eat. Y'all are hungry. The diets might be different, but both of y'all get hungry, right? So it comes down to perspective of yourself. Get clear on what your core values are. Get clear on what you love. Get clear on what you're interested in, what you're passionate about. Or even if you're not clear on what you're passionate about, you may have lost sight of that. Listen, you're talking to somebody that did. You're listening to someone that did. Even if you're not clear on what you're passionate about anymore, dig deep and find what you're curious about. Because even curiosity, the crumbs of curiosity will lead you to something that you can become passionate about. There was a time in the 9 years while I was working in the news media industry, and my colleague asked me, what do you like to do for fun? I literally forgot. I literally forgot what I would do for fun, what I even found fun, because I was so consumed in the work. And a lot of the people pleasing for me, what caused the chronic stress for me, is that I understand now, because I've learned the language, I have to address abandonment and rejection issues, starting from childhood and going forward. And people who struggle with people pleasing tend to struggle with one one of those issues or both of them. There are studies that reveal that. So if that's something that you deal with, rewind this video back and listen to what I talked about in terms of reminding yourself that you matter and that you are a luxury item. Because in order to overcome the rejection issues or even the abandonment issues, you have to be okay with yourself, being by yourself. That way, when people come and go in your life, it's not as traumatic. And that takes work. I'm not saying that's something you'll necessarily figure out on your own. There are some people who are very resilient and can figure that out on their own, but many of us will require community and therapy. And I'm here to tell you, if either one of those or both of them are what you need, then pursue them wholeheartedly. Don't let the people pleasing reach the point that it starts to physically manifest in your body, where the chronic stress starts to show up as illness and dis-ease in your body. In my case, the chronic stress and dis-ease over 9 years manifested itself in multiple conditions, not just one, multiple. I started having panic attacks. I developed depression for 2 years. I ended up growing multiple fibroids, and I had what I call the sick womb triad: fibroids, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and endometriosis. I'm perfectly okay revealing this stuff to you guys because it's me. Like, I'm not breaking any HIPAA laws here. That's a lot of conditions, and not to mention adult onset asthma. This is over the space of 9 years. Because at the time, I didn't have any coping mechanisms, and I didn't believe at the time that I had anyone to talk to about my feelings. Despite the very supportive environment that I had at home, I didn't necessarily feel safe talking about that stuff with my family. And because my friendship group was so small at the time, and the friends that I had were connected to the work I was doing, I definitely didn't feel safe talking about it with them. So I felt like I was in this cocoon where I couldn't talk to anybody about it. And that feeling manifested physically as a tightness in my chest and around my neck, which is what led to the anxiety attacks and the panic attacks that I started having. And that, coupled with asthma, will have you terrified. Because if you can't properly breathe, you'll start to get scared that you're dying. So all of these things were compounding. So if you're someone who is a people pleaser, start there. Start with reminding yourself of your worth, of how powerful you are. Do an inventory of all of your skills and all of the resources that are available to you in terms of people you know, in terms of what you know, what apps you use, all of those things. And do the gratitude journal. You guys have heard me talk about that in previous episodes if you've been rocking with me for a while. If you've never heard me talk about this, or if this is your first episode, if you don't have a journal, I strongly recommend you get one. Here's mine, or one of mine. I collect journals. I'm one of them weirdos. I collect journals. You see all these tabs? And they're all color-coded. Each color represents a different topic of focus. So for instance, if the journal entry has something to do with the mastermind that I'm a part of, the UOU mastermind, that's one color. If it was a brainstorming session having to do with any creative IP that I'm working on, that gets its own color. If it has something to do with revenue producing activity, that's another color. If it's deep work that I'm doing with the Lord, like with the Holy Spirit, quiet time with God, and He's helping me excavate stuff, that's another color. But all of these things can help with that first step, or I guess that pre-first step, which is valuing yourself first. Healing yourself and valuing yourself first. That way, rejection and abandonment don't have as much bite or influence in your decision making. Then that next step is setting the boundaries. You revisit your schedule, you find all the things that you got going on, all the things you've committed yourself to, and start to cross stuff off of there. Get a red pen and like make your calendar bleed for a while. Cut some stuff out that you don't find of high priority. And then make those calls, type those emails. Let the folks know, like, hey, you know what? I know I committed to this. I won't be available for it. Respectfully. I understand. I understand. I don't, this is not a normal practice of mine. I don't normally back out of anything. However, something more important has come up. Like another priority has come up that I need to address urgently. There are respectful and professional ways to tell somebody no. And again, to what I said earlier, anybody who doesn't respect your boundaries, cut them out. Okay? You don't have to struggle with people pleasing. After you set your boundaries, the next thing you'll definitely want is community. You'll want community. If you're not already a part of one, definitely find one to be a part of. If you want to be a part of our Goal Getters community, follow me on Instagram at Getting the Win Show and DM me. I will get you into mine. You have to be in a place where you feel safe. Safe to be your authentic self so that you can then properly represent your authentic self. That way, people's opinions of you are properly informed because they see the complete you, not just your representative. No one deserves to get only parts of you. The same way you're a luxury item and Jesus died for you, Jesus died for them too. They're luxury items too. Nobody deserves to get only a portion of you. If you're talking to me, I'm someone who is a lover of people. I'm not a flight attendant, so I'm not like all the high energy, like I'm not that person. But as grounds crew, we love people and we love tasks. We're oriented in both ways. And with grounds crew especially, we're the most loyal of the 4 behavior styles. I don't deserve just parts of you. If I'm going to be loyal to you, I need to know all of you. And as grounds crew, you're going to get all of me because that's all we know how to do. We as grounds crew are authentic people because we're just super humble. We're like, like we are who we are. So use my story as a cautionary tale and compare it to yours. If you're in a situation, you're a struggling people pleaser, but you haven't yet encountered the health challenges, work these steps, revisit your self-worth, and remind yourself of your self-worth. Remind yourself that you are a luxury item. And then start setting your boundaries and narrowing your schedule. Slim it down, get that surgery done. Cut out the stuff you don't need. And thirdly, get into community if you aren't in community already. Okay? And then lastly, what I mentioned before about therapy. If you need that extra step, get the therapy. Okay? BetterHelp is not a sponsor of this podcast, but that's a starting place. Because I understand that therapy is hard to come by. It can be very expensive. BetterHelp offers slightly more affordable options for therapy, more accessible options for therapy. If therapy is too expensive for you or it's out of your healthcare network or whatever, you can start there. But we got to get out of this people pleasing if we want to overcome procrastination and knock out this luxury item that's waiting for us to get back to it, right? So make an inward commitment to yourself. Make a decision to cut out the representative that you've been showing people. Get rid of the representative. People don't need that anymore. They don't deserve that anymore. People need to know the real you. If they cannot handle the real you, that's okay. What you alter is your level of contact with them, not who you are as a person. You see that difference? There's a huge difference right there. What we as recovering people pleasers will do is alter how much of ourselves we reveal, when the truth is, if we come correct, like fully, and we see how they respond, then we can know, okay, let me control how close I get to this person for future reference. Whether I ever contact them again, or maybe I keep it low contact, or if they're a safe space, good, I know I can be in touch with these people all the time, this person all the time. Huge difference there. Don't manipulate how much of yourself you reveal to people. Control how close you get to people, how frequently you contact them based on their response to the real you, their informed response. That way there's no pleasing left. You're not having to please them. They're responding to you, you're not responding to them. So that double false I mentioned at the beginning, both of those falses are well within your control. You can control how you show up, being your authentic self. And in doing so, you control what their opinion or impression of you is, because now they're seeing you for who you really are. That way you can be who you are, not who you think you are, or who they think you are, or who you think they think you are. You will just show up as you are. I hope that makes sense. And if this blessed you, by all means, subscribe right here on YouTube if you're watching it here on YouTube at Getting the Win. And of course, follow me over on Instagram, Pinterest, and Threads at Getting the Win Show. If you're interested in the Spring Forward Writers Retreat, go to springforwardretreat.com. Get your spot now. Time is running out. Do not procrastinate on this if you have a book in you. Do not procrastinate on this. The world needs what you know. The world needs what you know. I was just talking with a friend of mine earlier today who is a Gen X woman, and she shared some concepts that she plans to put in her book. And I said, listen, you just shared with me something I need. I need your book on my shelf. Like, let's go. Like, let's get on each other's calendars so I can walk you through the process and get that book out, because I need it. So if that's something that resonates with you, go to springforwardretreat.com for more information to get your spot. We will see you Thursday, March 13th through Sunday, March 16th. But in the meantime, in between time, thank you as always for tuning in to your one and only Procrastination Bully. It's Melissa T. Have a blessed and productive Wednesday and a blessed and productive rest of your week. Peace.